It is from Zahra, Nazemi. It's called Feminist Struggles in Eugene O'Neill's Desire Under the Elms and Its Classical Sources. Zahra is a joint PhD student of English literature in the University of Córdoba and also in Razi University. I believe that is how it's pronounced. I'm very sorry. And yeah, she's going to tell us about, I don't know how to pronounce it, but hopefully Eugene O'Neill. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, good morning. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity. My name is Zahra in the original pronunciation, but well, in Spain, we do not pronounce Z and H, so it will be Zahra. You pronounce it quite well. Thank you. Well, I'm currently working on my dissertation, which deals with Eugene O'Neill's recontextualization of classical literary topoi. Today, I would like to analyze Desire Under the Elms, which is one of the most famous plays written by O'Neill, but I would like to analyze it from a feminist perspective. I will begin my discussion with an introduction to Eugene O'Neill. I will also give a summary of Desire Under the Elms and then continue talking about the classical sources of influence, classical Greek and Latin sources of influence on the formation of this play. I discussed the common ideas in the representation of women's image in a male-dominated society in these classical sources. And finally, I will analyze the modernized representation of women's struggle for equality in Desire Under the Elms. So let's begin with Eugene O'Neill. He was a prominent American playwright whose name often appears alongside the most famous realist playwrights of the 19th and 20th century, such as Henrik Ibsen, Tennessee Williams, or Arthur Miller. O'Neill's concern with the dark aspects of human life, such as death, murder, alcoholism, unrequited love, prostitution, is illustrated in his works with an expressionistic, realistic, and even deterministic approach. With his emphasis on the power of fate and heredity in the life of middle class and in some cases low class characters in a modern urban society, he is generally considered as a naturalistic writer. Throughout his career, O'Neill won 4 Pulitzer Prizes for drama and a Nobel Prize for literature. His works have been translated into many languages, including Spanish, and have been adapted for theater and cinema. What distinguishes O'Neill from his contemporaries is that he not only modernizes formal conventions of classical Greek tragedies, followed by Euripides, Aeschylus, or Sophocles, such as the presence of the chorus, hamartia, the fall of the hero, arrogance or hubris, catharsis, but also rewrites specific examples of classical stories in a way that suits the demands of the modern audience. Well, in this presentation, I will concentrate on Desire Under the Elms, a play which is famous for imitating the myth of Hippolytus and Phaedra. Desire Under the Elms tells the story of Ephraim Cabot, who returns home after a long trip accompanied by his new wife, Abby. Unsatisfied with her marriage, Abby immediately gets infatuated with Ibn, Ephraim's youngest son, who is obsessed with taking revenge on his father for the death of his mother. After a cycle of struggles, Ibn and Abby finally unite and Abby gets pregnant. However, to receive the inheritance from Ephraim, she makes him believe that the child is his. Later, to prove her love to Ibn, she kills the baby, and Ephraim understands the whole truth. Enraged with Abby for the infanticide, Ibn reports this to the sheriff. However, after a while, he regrets and returns to Abby with sympathy, and at the end of the play, both are taken away by the sheriff. As you may have noticed, this story deals with a similar storyline to the classical myth of Phaedra's love for her son-in-law, Hippolytus. Phaedra narratives deal with a married woman who requires a young man, is rejected by him, and as a consequence, she falsely accuses him before her husband of having tried to rape her or having made loving proposals. At the end of the story, in the classical sources, the chaste beloved is always punished in some way, which is usually the consequence of a curse, and the Phaedra figure is always trying to commit suicide. It is interesting to see how this storyline is adopted in O'Neill's play. But before going into that discussion, I would like to present some of the classical examples of this narrative and analyze the position and the image of women in them. The earliest example of this storyline could be traced back to the Egyptian tale of two brothers. It recounts the story of Anubis's wife who tries to seduce Beta, her husband's younger brother. However, when he rejects her advances, she accuses him of having tried to seduce her. Another significant example could be the Greek myth of Bellerophon and Antia in Book 6 of Iliad. Accordingly, when Antia was rejected by Bellerophon, she accused her of sexual advances, as a result of which he was also punished. There are various versions of Hippolytus' Phaedra narrative. All share the same structural steps. Theseus has been away and absent, and Phaedra feels lonely. She is passionately in love with Hippolytus, but does not dare to express her feeling because she is afraid of rejection, as well as the loss of her reputation. So Phaedra's nurse encourages her, mediates the confession, or even informs Hippolytus about Phaedra's feeling. Hippolytus, chaste and loyal to his father, rejects the advances, but is cursed at the end of the story when his father believes in Phaedra's accusations. One more important example in the history of this narrative could be the biblical tale of Joseph and Potiphar's wife. The story follows the same narrative. However, what is interesting is the fact that we never know the name of Potiphar's wife, nor any background information about her. Her social status is recognized by her marriage to Potiphar. In the classical examples, women resort to a younger man when they are left alone. Women need to be seen by a man. They need to be loved and appreciated. Their sexual desires should be satisfied. Thus, in a male-oriented classical stories, if a man is left alone, she is prone to betrayal. Her identity is shaped by the presence of a man. I'm just talking about the representation of this image in these narratives. So once their husband is absent, they need a man to love them and appreciate them so they could exist. In these stories, women's excessive immoral passion is represented against men's chastity, wisdom, and loyalty. At the end of all these stories, women commit suicide because they can have no position in the society for the lack of loyalty, as well as for the loss of male respect. Women in these classical examples are in a stable economic condition due to marriage. Once their transgression of marriage bonds is revealed, they have nothing left. Consequently, in these stories, women's struggle is more psychological. They yearn for recognition and appreciation by the male society. Once this fails, they lose their identity and have no other ways but to commit suicide. In Eugene O'Neill's Desire Under the Elms, we see a different version of this narrative. Abby marries an old man whom she hates. She marries him for economic reasons. She hopes that once he dies, she will have freedom, which is a life of her own. To achieve a stable economic life which would facilitate her independence from the male society, Abby marries an old man and suggests the idea of having a child with him. Thus, she finds economic independence as the only solution to liberty. Here I have mentioned a quote from Abby, which could be considered like a confession when she's talking to Ibn, her son-in-law, about the reasons for her marriage to Ephraim, who is over 70 years old. However, it is important to remember that Abby has a more active attitude than her classical counterparts. Unlike father figures who were fearful of expressing their passion to the loved one, Abby confidently approaches even and insists on her intentions. She does not stop trying until she achieves what she wants. Unlike the classical characters, Abby does not choose suicide as the only solution to her loss of love. She insists on what she wants until she achieves it. This makes her a stronger and more daring character in comparison to the father figures for her struggles for independence. Of course, the dichotomy of the...
Hi,
Yes,
I'm sorry. Yeah, you have to end in 3 minutes. I'm very sorry, but we're late.
sure. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know. Of course, the dichotomy of the chaste Hippolytus and the wicked Phaedra has also disappeared from O'Neill's play. That is to say, Eben and Abby are on the same level. Eben visits a prostitute frequently and he finally submits to Abby's seductions. Euripides and Seneca tell us that Phaedra was previously in love with her husband, and now that she has been left alone, she has grown love for Hippolytus. But Abby is not in love with Ephraim at all. As I mentioned earlier, she marries him only with the hope of his death. So what's the problem? Why does she fail? If Abby is a more daring Phaedra, if instead of reporting to her husband or committing suicide, she continues in her struggle, why does she fail? We should remember that the play is context in America after the Civil War, where all the hopes are shattered. So even if the characters struggle, they can never reach their aims. This is the naturalistic nuance of O'Neill's plays. I would like to argue that in classical texts, the Phaedra figure yearns for appreciation, sexual gratification, and love, while for O'Neill, women's struggles have a more social aspect. Women turn to marriage, love, and passion in order to achieve financial independence, which they consider as the only solution to liberty in a male-oriented society. Once O'Neill demonstrates that these efforts fail. Determinism limits characters' actions. Abby in a Puritan society cannot achieve success from sin. Religion goes against reason. Femininity finally reveals itself, and fate cannot be fought in the context of O'Neill's play. That is how O'Neill tries to befriend ancient Greek stories in 20th century New England. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I'm on time.
Thank you.
Okay.